So my name is Daniel Berwin. I am the founder and creative director of Cognito Comics. I was also a teacher here for a while. And I'm here today to talk to you guys about a project I've been working on for actually a couple of years now called Operation Ajax. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I'm 31. I used to work in the games industry. It's actually where I got most of my professional art experience. And in 2006, I had worked on Tony Hawk 8 and was totally burned out and decided I wanted to do something different. So instead of doing a video game, which at the time was going to cost millions of dollars and take hundreds of people to produce, I thought I'd do a graphic novel, thinking it would be a lot easier, especially because I'm not an illustrator or a writer, and that was a lesson to be learned. So anyway, I'm going to show you a trailer of what we've done, and I'll talk a little bit more. I'm going to show you guys the trailer. I'll tell you a little bit more about sort of how we got to where we came to be, and I'll demo the iPad app and show you our entire art process, which is going to be really exciting and interesting for you guys, I think. So Ajax became an iPad project in March of last year when the iPad was announced, because I'm like, I'm a games guy, and oh my god, technology, it wouldn't be cool? Like, it's already hard enough to make a 190-page graphic novel when you're neither a writer or an illustrator. I should put it on the iPad. That'll make it easy. I'm going to show you guys the trailer first. This is kind of cool. There's no live action in this one, though. Ooh, let's go high res. Let's see here. Can we do that 720? There we go.
For decades, I have enjoyed the resources of my country, reducing the Iranian people to economic servitude. My countrymen lack the bare necessities of existence, while the world's largest oil field keeps British televisions flickering late into the night. They have pitted the United States, a country once we admired, against us. And now the Americans have brought my own people against me. Iran's greatest asset has become our downfall. To achieve economic and political independence, the oil must belong to the people, no matter the cost.
Dun dun dun. Anyway. Thanks. So I wanted to do something socio-political. I thought games would be a really cool idea until I figured it was going to cost a lot of money and probably be really bad, because it's hard enough to make an entertaining game that's good to start with, whether or not it has a positive message. So I decided to try to get into comics, and it's been a crazy odyssey. We started out doing a printed book, and it ballooned into this, like, I thought it'd be like 40 pages. Now it's like 200, and we've gone through a lot of different artists, because I also realized that trying to get a single artist to commit to doing a 200-page book is a really, really big commitment, and you're also dependent on that one person. So if they get sick or hit by a car or they burn out, you're kind of stuck unless you want to try to blend and use a different approach. So it's been a real education for me, coming from a team-based approach to doing something that's, like usually traditionally done by just a handful of people with a whole different creative structure to it. I'm going to switch now to the video camera and show you guys the actual app, because just like video game trailers, it's like all this pre-rendered stuff, and you're like, what's the actual game look like? And it looks really different. I think that arguably the comic book is cooler looking than the trailer, I hope. But I'm just going to show you guys a little bit of a preview of one of our later chapters and show you guys sort of what the app looks like in action. So. Also, it's been one of the challenges with creating stuff on the iPad is that we can't really control the frame rate. So, oh, it's a lot louder. Look at that. Whoop. All right. So basically, the way it works, I got really inspired by the Watchmen motion comic, except that it was more like watching a really badly animated film. And I wanted to keep the interactivity of a story in that you get to control the pace at which you consume it. So basically, every image is still paired up with text. You get that sort of hyper-focus of text and image, but with little extras here. And you can see how obnoxiously fast the animation is right now. It's not supposed to go quite that quickly. But anyway, we started to sort of latch onto this idea that instead of going panel by panel, which is the sort of iPhone approach because you're dealing with a smaller screen, with the iPad you have a lot more space, but it's still not the same size as a full printed comic book page. We wanted to find a hybridized sort of in-between where you get a certain set of panels at any given time, and they dynamically rearrange themselves into an optimal composition. My hands are like totally blocking the screen. Let's see. So every time I advance it, you can see that the panels have been very meticulously placed to create an optimal composition for whatever's being shown on the screen at a single time. And so just a little bit of backstory. This is the true story of the overthrow of Iran's government by the CIA in 1953. It's a story that I was really inspired by, given the sort of I guess, implications of our foreign policy these days. And this is my attempt to try to engage a wider audience about stuff that I feel passionate about. So we actually partnered with a journalist named Stephen Kinzer, who's a New York Times bestselling author, who wrote a book called All the Shah's Men. And he's sort of been our grand overlord of, hey, that didn't really happen that way. And we're like, yeah, but it's going to be really boring if we tell a cold, hard, dry fact. And there's a certain balance that has to be struck between creating a story that's completely true versus like truncating, elements a little bit. And every day I have to make really hard decisions about, is this going to be fun and engaging, or is it just going to be cold, dry, and boring? So what you're seeing here is a scene between the Prime Minister of Iran and the Shah arguing over the military. And lots of little animation in every panel, like with the hand coming down. I thought that was really cool. It's really fast, but there's subtle movement. And we didn't want too much, because then it's going to start looking like a movie, and we didn't want it to look like a movie. We wanted it to look more like an enhanced comic. And this is cool too. When you advance here, the whole thing slides off, so the concept of the page is getting kind of destroyed in a way, which I really am excited about, because we sort of start with a printed book sort of paradigm and then blow it apart for animation on the iPad. And so what you're seeing now is sort of this interesting transition. I'll show you what these actual pages look like as well, so you can see the print version. But our way of sort of introducing elements becomes really dynamic, and this part's really cool. So what you're actually seeing is full 3D with a flattened camera. Everything's been cut out and put on planes. And at this next part, check out the little paper falling. They're actually 3D. And so it's a question of how much can we manipulate that without it looking cheesy or getting in the way of the storytelling. And what we found the hard way at the beginning of all of this is that too much animation is not good. Too much animation gets in the way of the storytelling. It changes what you're actually experiencing, which isn't a bad thing, but we really wanted to make this a comic book product that was adapted for this medium. And now, the more deeper we get into it, the more we're realizing we can bring in elements of video games and animation. In fact, the author who wrote the story was an animation director. He used to work at DreamWorks, and before that, Beavis and Butthead a long time ago. Also excited to work on something, I think, with a little more social merit. But be that as it may, oh, this is cool, too. There's a little bit of subtle parallax here with the guys in front of the background, and then you click it again, and they kind of slide over to make room for the panel. So this is something we just kind of figured out, wow, that works really well. We don't need to push it that much further for this particular story. And there's so much experimentation we want to do, but the scope of this book doesn't really warrant it. And so next we're thinking about doing smaller stories that allow us to really push 3D and using the camera and having gameplay right in a panel or something like that. This is one of my favorite pages. This is a giant protest. Mossadegh, the Prime Minister, resigns, and everyone gets really upset about that. So these are a couple of oil workers who come to Tehran to join in the protests. And I'll show you what happens next. It's kind of dramatic. So we have the Shah's loyal troops here trying to break up the mob, and he orders them to shoot in the crowd. The guy refuses, so his commander pulls out his gun and shoots him, which actually happened. It's a true story. So we really wanted to use this medium to push the drama of it, and it can be a very, I think, dramatic way of doing storytelling with minimal animation, but done in a way that's really, really powerful. I feel like we're just now starting to get into our stride with it. This is after a year of working in the tool and figuring out what looks good. This is really cool too. The glass is transparent, so you can see stuff moving behind it. And this is, of course, Mossadegh and his right-hand man, reflecting on the incidents of him resigning and feeling really bad about it. But anyway, I could go through this all night. It's a pretty cool and interesting story. So I'll show you a little bit of the actual app itself. This is, like I said, a preview. So I'm going to go to the actual live app. This is actually live in the App Store right now, and you can now today get the first 3 chapters for free. So we're experimenting with trying to engage our audience and see what works. And I think eventually we're going to give away half of the book for free, and then sell the entire complete volume with sound. We can and maybe more enhancements in interactivity. I'll show you a little bit of sort of what. Let's see. Here's chapter 4. This is the latest chapter that just came out about 3 weeks ago. And I think I can skip ahead. So, where is it? Here we go. So America is involved in this story. And before we actually ended up overthrowing Iran's government, we actually had Truman in office, and he was trying to be a mediator. So there's a distinct contrast between him and Eisenhower. Eisenhower was the president that followed Truman, and because of the people he had working under him in his foreign policy division, they basically duped him into committing to a coup. So I'm going to go ahead and forward here just a little bit more to show you a section of one of the main characters named Averell Harriman. He's kind of like the wolf from Pulp Fiction. He's like the badass diplomat that we have to send in to fix everything. So this is where they go, who are we going to send in? And they look at each other and go, Harriman. He's the guy. You can't really see the text, but you just have to take my word for it. It's actually all in Japanese. And so, there's a lot of things to play with in terms of camera and, and interactivity. But what we have is we have the ability at any time to make things interactive. And this is kind of a bumbling first pass at that, but he's blinking subtly. You kind of see that. And if you click on him, you can instantly pull up information on these characters. So there's a photo and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm not really that proud of this in terms of interactivity. I think it'd be cooler if the panels flipped around or the camera moved off of the comic and over to as if you're looking at a table, and there's a stack of other documents next to what you were reading. But again, it's really hard to visualize that stuff, and it just takes a lot of R&D to make it work. But anyway, you'll notice that there's these extra items here. If I turn it sideways, go. Is it going to go? Do I have rotation lock on? I do. I don't. Let's see here. Go to the desktop. There we go. So every character has a dossier, and you'll see a whole collection of these sort of elements that you could theoretically unlock. Yeah, it's a ridiculously large-scale project. So we will have one for Harriman. We haven't put it in yet, but here's I don't know, Alan Dulles. He's head of the CIA in this story, and so here's photos of him, and you can read his dossier. Oh, wall of text. Oh my God, you can make everything really small and you can organize it. There you go. If you have OCD, I gave this to my friends and they're like, wait, I have to put it all away. And it's multi-touch. Woo! So anyway, it's very entertaining. And you'll be able to flip these over and find notes written on the back by the narrator, who's a CIA agent himself who was in this thing and felt, guilty at 90 years old, reflecting on his life. That was sort of our vehicle for getting you stuck in or invested in the story. But it's a really cool idea to be able to find hidden objects and then collect them. We're actually looking at education after this, because how cool would it be to take this into classrooms and get Xbox Live style achievements for reading and finding all the hidden stuff. I mean, it's hard enough to engage people these days anyway with stuff that I think has real meritable value. So this is my desperate attempt to be no, look how cool it is. You could move stuff around on the screen. So anyway, you guys are probably really curious how this all works, and these are all the different chapter covers.
If you can manage to make a 12-year-old dislike Dulles as much as I do, that'd be amazing.
Well, maybe a 17-year-old.
Oh.
That's it's really a high school and up kind of story. There's boobs in this story. We can't give it to 12-year-olds. But anyway, and actually, I'm actually proudest of the covers, because these were done by traditional comics artists, and you can see how much better the art looks than most of the stuff that's in the comic itself. These are just really, really beautiful. So anyway, so I'm going to go back to my laptop now, but that's an overview of the actual app. So there you go. So a lot of you are probably wondering, well, how do you make something like that? And it is hard. Making a normal comic is hard enough, and we already do that, plus we do all the crazy stuff you saw on the iPad. But it all starts with a script, which is probably not a big surprise to you. Does anyone here actually write their own stories? Oh, wow, that's awesome. And also illustrates? That's great. Okay, so I have a tremendous amount of respect. I can do both. For people who can do both, that's awesome. When you have the hybrid, I guess the two halves of the brain or whatever working in conjunction, then apparently you have motor skills and you can make a comic book all by yourself. That's great. I can't do that. I have to heavily rely on people. I can't write. I basically sit over their shoulder and go, I don't know about that. My team loves me. I'm a very popular person with them. So story is king, and I say that all the time because at the heart of it, art is not going to make a good story. A story is going to make a good story, and art's going to make it better. We had to learn that the hard way because I'm an artist, and doesn't really matter how pretty something is if the writing's not good. So after we do the script, then we go to thumbnails. This is actually pretty parallel, I believe, to how most comics are produced anyway. Let's see here, production art. So I'll show you the thumbnails from the prologue. Actually, let's go to chapter 2. And these are all the different steps of the process. So we actually teamed up with a man named Sergio Paez. He actually is an Academy alumni, I think. Storyboard artist at Pixar, and left Clone Wars to work for us, which is pretty cool. Might say something about Lucasfilm. I don't know. No offense to those guys. I used to work at EA and Activision, so I can say that. But anyway, the whole, basically we do a whole pre-visualization as if it's a printed book. So these are our thumbnails done by Sergio. They're totally awesome. They've got so much expression. It's like we don't really need to go much like higher art than this, really. I mean, if the core idea is to just tell a story, this is basically all you need. But it's my ego that makes it go more than that, for better or worse. So you can see the entire book is basically pre-visualized in this process. And it's so much easier to work stuff out on the page like this. I can't speak highly enough of this process. So that's an example of, say, a whole chapter done in thumbnails. And then after that, we'll actually take it into sort of the finished art process, which uses Photoshop. So I'll bust down the Photoshop. This is one of our. You guys should probably recognize this. This is, you saw this page in the graphic novel. Oh, did I not show you chapter 4? Oh, okay. Yeah, I meant to show you this page. Anyway, this is what it looks like. Actually, we can go back and forth, right? Not a big deal. You guys want to see what this looks like on the iPad? Yeah. All right. So this is a 400 DPI, 11 by 17, massive, super detailed image. Oh, there it goes. Wow, my laptop is slow. Yeah.
The MacBook Pro, man.
This is a MacBook Pro.
God.
I'm embarrassed. I know, it's an older MacBook Pro. This is the Apple model in motion right here. So anyway, that's all crazy layers. I'll show you on the iPad first, and then I'll go back into to Photoshop. Let's see here. Yo, you guys can all see my secret code. It's 1, 2, 3, 4.
He's not kidding.
I should load back up. Here we go. Okay, cool. So this is the predecessor scene of that. Nope, don't want to log in. Thanks, Apple. And so this is our star diplomat coming to Iran, trying to be a diplomat and being greeted by many angry, pissed off Iranians who are so frustrated at the situation that they are threatening his life, which is also a true part of the story. And there's just lots of multi-layer effects going on here. Again, all this is pulled from that single Photoshop document you saw. And it's just kind of a cool way to build drama and action and suspense into a flat medium with just a little bit of motion. And I have to give credit to my animator, because he's the one who kind of came up with this sort of cropping effect that we did right here. It's really cool. And this is Harriman making his escape, going, wow, this just sucks. And you can see the background isn't fully drawn in there. It's pretty funny. So it's one of the things we have to fix. It's one of the challenges of making this sort of medium. So there's Truman getting the note, and there's a little extra on him. And that's supposed to be a real newspaper article, but we don't have licensing rights. So I'm kind of just ready to be like, yeah, we should probably take that out. Oh, sad panda. We failed. So anyway, so I'll show you, go back to the PSD now that you've seen the iPad version. So what does it take to make that? Well, it takes a lot of work. And I'm just going to go over sort of the layers here. So every panel is on its own layer, as well as multiple pieces within them. So this is the first panel here, which is, of course, on its own sort of thing. And on top of that, oops, you can move the individual elements around. Yeah. So there's the bodyguards. So, oops. Yeah, it's just nuts. You can see how massive this whole document is. So every piece is I'm back here. Oh my God, I have no legs. Anyway,
how big is this file?
It's large. It's probably about 100 megs. Yeah. We actually started at 600 DPI, and we realized that was madness. So so now we're at 400. Anyway, so that just sort of gives you an overview. Imagine the entire file is completely broken up into pieces like that. So once we've, yeah?
Does your artist draw them all individually like that and then layer them on?
Yeah, and we've gone through a lot of artists.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
I hope no one's committed suicide on my watch, but this is one of the first lessons to learn is most comics people who work in the industry traditionally, this is not a reality, unfortunately. And that's okay. I think when people quote a page rate, they have no idea what you're actually asking them for, so that's something to be considered. But the other side of it is that, the people who have really succeeded at this are the people who know Photoshop really, really, really well. I've had many artists insist on, I want to draw traditionally, and then I'll sell the originals, and I'm going to scan it all in there, and I'm like, okay. And then, of course, like 3 pages later, they're like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I'm like, yeah, not surprising. So, as much as I had my heart set on getting like a super awesome rock star industry dude to do this, I don't think it was really viable for our project. And the most successful model we've found now is to actually use a team-based approach. So Sergio, the same storyboard artist who did, the pre-visualization for the first fourth of the book or whatever, is actually running a team of animation people who are now doing pages as a team. And it's working a lot better. But the trade-off is that you don't get the same consistent art style across all the different pages. So it's a win-lose sort of what do you want to leverage for your strengths. One of the biggest challenges for us is keeping the characters looking consistent because they're all based off real people. I'm going to go to the next phase of this. So once you have the Photoshop document done, you go into Illustrator and you letter it. I don't think you guys really care that much about Illustrator, but basically, just like in traditional comics, we letter all our stuff in Illustrator. We're actually producing every page to be printed, so this could be obviously a printed document as well. And then the next step after that is to do an animation plan of the chapter. So this is my massive layered Photoshop document, and every panel is a step of the animation. So this is really easy to give to my animators. This is me pre-visualizing sort of the scene in terms of size and placement of the panels. So it's more of an interactive composition. And then they come up with ideas like, oh, how cool would it be to move this guy first, or I'll come in and be like, oh no, you need proper parallax, move the foreground more, or that needs to be larger, or that's wrong, do it again every once in a while. And then they sort of infer from there and are able to animate. So what's great about this for me is that it allows me to kind of spend some time in a really easy-to-use piece of software to quickly lay stuff out and think about how I want it to look. And as you can see, it deviated a bit from what ended up in the actual final iPad composition. So that's sort of a run-through of that. And we have 2 of these per chapter, so that's about one half of a chapter in terms of steps. So the next step after this is done is we actually have to start animating. To animate, we have to prep our assets, which means making texture atlases out of them, because what you're seeing is a real-time environment. It's actually a game engine running the whole thing. So I know you guys are probably rolling your eyes going, I'm never going to do this. This is ridiculous. It's okay. That's why we're the only people that have so far. So then you have Targas and Photoshop documents. Let's see here. That's chapter 4 for this. Whoop. So this is the entire chapter broken down into sheets that look like this. Each one of these is 1024 by 1024 pixels with alpha. And you can see we have a budget of only so many per page because it's real time. So every image you make has to be stored in memory on the iPad. The iPad 1, at least, was not like the most rock star powerhouse device you've ever seen. It's basically an iPhone 3GS. So for those who know anything about video games, it's not that strong. It's basically a glorified cell phone. The iPad 2 has 9 times the video processing power. So I don't know. I imagine our book runs ridiculously fast on the new one. But anyway, I have to go through and do this to make the lives of my illustrators a lot more pleasant. And it takes me probably about, a day to a day and a half to go through and figure out what size everything needs to be, maximize it, right? Because I'm doing this all by hand, and if it's too small, it'll look blurry on the device. So there's a lot of video game sort of know-how and knowledge and workflow into laying these assets out. So this is an entire chapter's worth of art. This is 1 chapter out of 10. After that, you're ready to take them into our proprietary tool, and you're able to mesh them and then start animating them. So I'm actually going to open up that one page in Unity. Has anyone here ever actually heard of Unity? 4 people? 3? 5? Cool. Unity is awesome. I can't say enough good things about that piece of software. And we created a custom plugin that basically makes it work like Flash, but it's full 3D, it's scriptable, you can do physics, you could do all sorts of crazy stuff. All the stuff that Unity does, but with a comic book interface if you want. So I'm going to go ahead and load up the page here. Let's see here. So this is software developed by Talchair. They're our development partner who've been creating this for us. And I don't know if you guys can see it here, but I can't pan it all. This is our previewer down here, and then I'm going to just start playing it through, and you can sort of see stuff start to animate in the page. So Let's see if I can make this a little bit larger. There we go. This mouse doesn't actually work the way I want it to, so bear with me. So this whole scene is full 3D. I don't know if you guys can see all that. Isn't that crazy? It's pretty cool. And then as you play it through, I have to click down here. So this is like the iPad mock-up. You can sort of go. Let's see if I can. Oh, it's gonna be up here. There it is. It's over here. Aha! Come here. So that's those panels right there that you're seeing. Moving in 3D. Yeah, this is not easy. So as you guys can see, we're barely scratching the surface of what this can do. We can put full 3D models in here. I mean, you imagine like you drive a car through one of the panels as a game. You know, I mean, unfortunately, Ajax doesn't really call for it, but I can't wait to work on the next project. You know, first of all, because I've been working on this project since 2008, but also because, you know, now that like Apple sold like 14 million iPads before like the year was out, and I don't know how many iPad 2s are going to sell, but probably another good chunk of those. So I'm really excited about sort of what we can do with this medium and what it means for both people who work in comics, people who work in games, people who work in film. You know, I mean, instead of spending millions of dollars to make an animated movie now, you could make something like this and see how your audience receives it for a fraction of the price. So I'm sure you guys have lots of questions about this, but that's basically our tool, for lack of a better way of showing it. It's not the easiest thing to work in, but we are looking for interns. If anybody wants to try learning this stuff, we could actually use some production help, and you'll get credited on the product after it ships. So something to keep in mind. If that's appealing, probably not. I probably totally blew it, right? I'm like, it's really hard. You guys are like, yeah, screw that. I'm not going there. Anyway, so just to show you also, you guys sort of saw the pages, but the whole book is being produced as a printed volume as well, and hopefully we will get a print deal and be able to distribute it that way. But this is what the pages actually look like. So every page is also designed to work in a traditional 8x10. There we go. So we had to learn how to make comics, and it was really, really hard. And I have nothing but respect for the people who do it, because it's a lot of work. Cool. So that's basically what I have to show on Ajax. Oh, yeah, and I showed you guys the app, so that's cool. So I guess that's basically what I have to show for now. Cool.